0400, the 22nd of December 2025, Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach, Florida. President Donald Trump steps to a podium flanked by his Defense Secretary and his Navy Secretary. Behind them, a rendering glows on the screen. A warship unlike anything the United States has built in over 80 years. The president leans into the microphone. They will be the fastest, the biggest, and 100 times more powerful than any battleship ever built. The crowd erupts. 4 months later, the man standing beside Trump that night is fired. John Phelan, the 79th Secretary of the Navy, a Harvard-educated billionaire and major Trump donor, is told to resign or be removed. The announcement comes via a post on social media. No ceremony, no farewell. In the middle of an active naval blockade of Iran, the United States fires its own Navy Secretary over a disagreement about a ship that has not yet been built. This is not a story about politics. This is a story about what happens when the most powerful navy in the world tries to build the most expensive surface warship in history, and why the people who know ships best cannot agree on whether this idea will save American naval power or sink it. We do not cover the battle. We find the breaking point. The last time the United States commissioned a battleship, the Cold War was still alive. USS Missouri entered active service in 1986, carrying 16-inch guns that could hurl a 2,000-pound shell 23 miles. When she was decommissioned in 1992, the Navy declared the age of the battleship over. Guided missiles had made them obsolete. Why put all your firepower on one massive target when you could spread it across a dozen destroyers? That logic held for 33 years. Then, China happened. By 2026, China operates the largest navy in the world by ship count, over 370 vessels compared to the American fleet of 294. More importantly, China's shipbuilding capacity is estimated at 230 times that of American yards. 230 times. While Newport News Shipbuilding struggles to deliver one carrier every 5 years, Chinese yards are launching destroyers, frigates, and amphibious assault ships at a pace that American planners find genuinely alarming. The magazine gap is what keeps admirals awake. An Arleigh Burke destroyer, the backbone of the American fleet, carries 96 vertical launch cells. Each cell holds one missile. When those 96 missiles are gone, the ship must return to port to reload. There is no reload at sea for vertical launch systems. In a sustained high-intensity fight against China in the Pacific, American destroyers run out of missiles before Chinese shipyards run out of ships. Trump's answer to this problem is USS Defiant. The lead ship of the Trump-class battleship program, formerly designated BBG-1, will displace between 35,000 and 40,000 tons. That is triple the size of an Arleigh Burke. It will carry 128 vertical launch cells, 32 more than any current destroyer. It will be equipped with hypersonic missiles, directed energy weapons, and a modular weapons architecture designed to accept technologies that do not yet exist. It will measure between 260 and 270 meters in length, slightly longer than the legendary Japanese battleship Yamato. And it will be nuclear-powered. That last detail is where everything gets complicated. When the program was announced in December 2025, nuclear propulsion was described as a possibility. By April 2026, Navy Secretary Phelan told reporters at the Sea Air Space Exposition that nuclear power was, and these were his exact words, unlikely. One day after that statement, Phelan was fired. 3 weeks later, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Daryl Caudle testified before Congress. "I am thrilled we finally landed on the fact that it is going to be nuclear," Caudle said. "We batted it around to deliver it sooner, to make it conventional, and we came back around full circle to make it nuclear." He then said something that reframes the entire history of American surface naval power. "We walked away from surface nuclear power decades ago, and that was one of the largest mistakes the Navy ever did. One of the largest mistakes the Navy ever did." This statement deserves to sit for a moment. The United States Navy, an institution that does not casually admit error, just called one of its foundational post-Cold War decisions one of its largest mistakes. The decision to decommission nuclear-powered surface ships in the 1990s, the Long Beach, the Truxtun, the Bainbridge, the California-class cruisers, was made on grounds of cost and complexity. Nuclear ships are expensive to build, expensive to crew, and require specialized infrastructure at every port they enter. But nuclear power gives a surface warship something that no amount of fuel tanks can replace: unlimited range and unlimited electrical power. That second part matters more than most people realize. The directed energy weapons that the Navy wants to put on USS Defiant, the high-powered lasers capable of burning through drone airframes, the electronic warfare systems that can blind incoming missiles, the railguns under development that accelerate projectiles to hypersonic speeds, all of these systems require enormous amounts of electrical power. Power that a conventional propulsion system, one that burns fuel and manages a finite energy budget, cannot reliably sustain in combat. A nuclear reactor changes that equation entirely. The A-1B reactor, the same design that powers Ford-class aircraft carriers, generates enough electricity to run every weapon system simultaneously while still propelling a 90,000-ton carrier at over 30 knots. On a 35,000-ton battleship, that same reactor would provide power in quantities that current surface warships cannot approach. The price tag reflects this ambition. Budget documents submitted to Congress project the lead ship, USS Defiant, at $17.47 billion. For context, a Ford-class nuclear aircraft carrier costs between $13 and $15 billion. USS Defiant, a surface combatant without an air wing, without the ability to project air power, will cost more than the most advanced carrier in human history. 15 ships are planned through 2055, at roughly one every other year. If each costs $17 billion, the program totals $255 billion. Life cycle costs across the 50-year service life of the fleet could reach $500 to $700 billion, making this the most expensive surface combatant program in naval history by a margin that strains comprehension. And the first ship will not be delivered until 2036. Here is where the breaking point becomes visible. Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia is the only facility in the United States capable of building nuclear-powered surface warships. It is currently the only yard building Ford-class carriers. The backlog is already significant. CVN 79 John F. Kennedy, CVN 80 Enterprise, CVN 81 Doris Miller, which was just announced as delayed by 2 years. Adding a program that requires the construction of the most complex surface combatant ever designed, using a nuclear propulsion system not employed on surface ships since the 1990s, at a facility already stretched, is not a manufacturing plan. It is an aspiration. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, a senior director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, put it directly. He and the president cooked up an extremely bad idea, which is a very large target known as a battleship. That is going to cost $24 to $26 billion minimum for the first one, which is the cost of like 12 destroyers. 12 destroyers. 12 Arleigh Burkes, each carrying 96 missiles, each independently capable of operations, would give the Navy 968 vertical launch cells distributed across 12 platforms that can be in 12 different places simultaneously. USS Defiant gives the Navy 128 cells on a single ship that must be in a single place. The critics call this the concentration problem. Every naval lesson since World War II points in the same direction. Distributed lethality is survivability. The reason carriers travel with strike groups rather than alone is that a single ship, no matter how capable, is a single target. One successful missile strike, one torpedo, one catastrophic failure, and that concentration of capability is gone. The Yamato herself, the largest battleship ever built, was sunk in 1945 by aircraft launched from carriers she was designed to fight. The supporters of USS Defiant have a different reading of that history. Modern battleships are not World War II battleships. The threat environment has changed, and so has the technology. An Iowa-class battleship had almost no ability to defend itself against aircraft at long range. USS Defiant will carry standard missile interceptors, high-energy lasers, close-in weapon systems, and an electronic warfare architecture designed to defeat the saturation attacks that define modern naval combat. The argument is that a ship with 128 launch cells and a nuclear reactor can sustain a level of magazine depth and defensive power that a destroyer strike group cannot. The magazine depth argument is also where the China problem comes back into focus. In a prolonged conflict in the Pacific, the United States does not just face the challenge of defeating Chinese naval forces. It faces the challenge of sustaining combat operations across an ocean, while Chinese shipyards continue producing hulls faster than American missiles can sink them. A nuclear-powered battleship that can stay on station indefinitely, that does not need to return to port for fuel, that carries a magazine nearly a third larger than current destroyers, represents a different kind of answer to that problem. The question is whether the answer arrives in time. Construction of USS Defiant is scheduled to begin in 2028. Delivery is projected for 2036. That is a 10-year runway from announcement to commissioning, in a security environment where American planners openly discuss a potential conflict with China in the Indo-Pacific within that same decade. The Navy is aware of this tension. The official shipbuilding plan acknowledges that digital engineering and modular construction will be employed to manage costs and schedules. These are the same assurances that accompanied the Zumwalt-class destroyer program, which began at 32 ships, was cut to 3 due to cost overruns, and delivered a platform so expensive to operate that its primary weapon system was cancelled because the ammunition was unaffordable. The Zumwalt precedent is the reason the criticism is not simply political noise. Programs that begin with ambitious capability goals, encounter manufacturing challenges at the only yard capable of building them, and face cost growth that exceeds initial estimates have a pattern in American naval history. The LCS, the Constellation-class frigate, the Ford-class carrier itself, which delivered with electromagnetic launch system problems and elevator malfunctions that took years to resolve. The concern is not that USS Defiant is a bad idea in theory. The concern is that American shipbuilding infrastructure may not be capable of delivering on the theory at the promised cost and schedule. The firing of John Phelan captures the stakes of this argument in one moment. A Navy secretary who called nuclear propulsion unlikely on a Monday was removed on a Tuesday. The message was unmistakable. The decision about the direction of American naval power had already been made, and it was made at a level that does not accommodate internal dissent. What happens next is the equation that matters. USS Defiant will either represent the most significant reversal in American naval doctrine since the nuclear carrier program of the 1960s, a bet on concentrated firepower and nuclear endurance that positions the United States for a generation of Pacific competition, or it will join the list of programs that absorbed billions of dollars and years of industrial capacity, while the fleet it was meant to strengthen waited. The keel is not yet laid. The yard has not started cutting steel. The reactor design is confirmed but not built. Everything that follows depends on whether American shipbuilding can close the gap between what the admirals want and what the yards can deliver. That gap is where the next equation begins. The Navy that fired its secretary over a ship design is the same Navy asking Congress for $17 billion to build it. That tension between ambition and capacity, between the fleet America wants and the fleet American yards can produce, is not unique to this program. It is the defining problem of American naval power in 2026, and USS Defiant, for better or worse, is the most expensive answer anyone has ever proposed. If you want to understand what comes next, what China is watching, and what one nuclear-powered battleship actually changes about the Pacific balance, that breakdown is what we are doing next. The battleship debate inside the Navy is not simply about this ship. It is about what kind of Navy America needs to fight the war it might face against an adversary that builds ships faster than any nation in history, in an ocean so wide that fuel and magazine capacity determine outcomes as much as tactics do. $17 billion buys a very specific answer to that question. Whether it is the right answer will be determined not at a podium in Palm Beach, and not in a congressional hearing room, but at Newport News Shipbuilding, where the steel will eventually meet the water years from now, in a strategic environment none of us can fully predict today. The equation is set, the variables are enormous, and the Navy's most expensive bet is officially on the table. Type the word Defiant in the comments if this changed how you see the future of American naval power. Every single response gets read. Subscribe now so the next breakdown reaches you before anyone else does. The Pacific question is coming. The numbers behind it are unlike anything we have covered yet. The gap between American ambition and American industrial capacity runs deeper than one battleship, one firing, and one $17 billion price tag. The full picture is what we are building toward. And it starts with what China already knows that most Americans do not. That is the breaking point nobody is calculating yet. And that is exactly where we will be next. We do not cover the battle. We find the breaking point. And this program has more of them than any ship the Navy has ever tried to build.